Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Double Reward. Inshallah, we're going to talk about the importance of tajweed today, and we're also going to cover some more letters. First of all, ilm al-tajweed, or the rules of tajweed, are very, very important. The reason is that they're one of the tools that help to preserve the Book of Allah. Without tajweed, without the rules of tajweed, we'll lose something of the Qur'an. And that's why it's very important for us to learn tajweed so that we can protect and preserve and continue keeping and having the Qur'an. The other reason is that when we learn tajweed and we apply the rules, we're reciting the Qur'an exactly like the Prophet ﷺ. We're lengthening our voice exactly where he lengthened it, and for the exact same time. We're stopping where he stopped, and we're going where he went. And we're emphasizing the exact letters that he emphasized. And I think that's a remarkable thing, that somebody 1400 years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ is still able to pronounce the Qur'an exactly like he pronounced it and as it came out of his lips. But that takes time, and it takes practice to get your vocal system accustomed to ilm al-tajweed. Now, aren't you excited about learning to say the Qur'an like the Prophet ﷺ? Are you ready to learn the ahkam al-tajweed, to say it just like him? Now, before we start, there are certain adab for starting. And the first one of these is what is called isti'adha. Or an isti'adha is to say, A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim, or I seek refuge in Allah from Satan the accursed. Let's make sure you have that down, and let's practice along with the people with us here in the studio. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
Say it with us. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
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 As I said, that means I seek refuge in Allah from Satan the accursed. So why do we start with this? Why do we start our recitation or our qira'ah with isti'adha? The reason is that Allah says in the Qur'an, فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. He's speaking to the Prophet and also to the Ummah. When you begin to read the Qur'an, begin with, I seek refuge in Allah from Satan the accursed. So that's the first thing that we do. The second thing that we do is we say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's say that all of us together. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
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 What those words mean is, in the name of Allah, the ever merciful, the mercy giving. And though that group of words is called Basmala. Let's say that together. Basmala.
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 Okay, so now when do you say isti'adha and when do you say basmala? Well, if you're sitting down with a group of your friends and you're like, okay guys, or let's sit down and let's read the Qur'an. I'm going to start. So then when you start to read, you start out with أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Then you move on to the surah that you're going to read. Your friend, when it's his turn to read, he starts out with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim right away. So when you're starting a session, you're starting a reading session for the first time, you say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم out loud the first time. Now, suppose you're not with your friends at all, but you're by yourself, you're in your room, or you're praying. In that case, you start out by saying A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, but privately or secretly, you say it to yourself. You say it like this. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Okay? Inshallah, then after that, let's talk about al-basmala. You should always, whenever you sit down to read the Quran, you should always start out with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Why? Why do we do that? Well, because all good things, all blessed things should begin in the name of Allah. After all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He began the process of revelation, the process of bringing down this book, He started out in His name. He started out with Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. He said, read in the name of your Lord. Isn't that the first revelation? Isn't read in the name of your Lord similar to read in the name of Allah, the ever merciful, the mercy giving? Aren't both of those phrases invoking the same God? Also, when Sayyidina Nuh first made his ship and he was building it and it was time for the ship to sail, Allah commanded him to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And then again when it was going to settle down, He also commanded him to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So from these two things we understand that whenever you start anything, big or small, important or unimportant, begin with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Okay, now we're ready to start practicing our surah for today, which is Surat An-Nas. Inshallah, I'm going to read it with the translation, and then after that, you can look forward to being able to repeat after us. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. Say, I seek refuge with the Lord of mankind. مَلِكِ النَّاسِ. The King of mankind. إِلَهِ النَّاسِ. The God of mankind. مِن شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ. From the evil of the whisperer who withdraws. الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ. Who whispers in the breasts of mankind. مِنَ الْجِنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ. Of jinn and men. Surah An-Nas is considered as a surah that protects a human being from evil the evil of people and from the evil of devils, or from the evil of Satans. And it starts out with قُلْ. Say, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. Say, I seek refuge in Allah, the Lord of people. So the question you have to ask yourself is, if Allah is telling me to seek refuge in Him, when I face danger and I do that, would He let me down? That's why Surah An-Nas will increase your iman and increase your faith and increase your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, let's have some collective recitation so that you can have a chance to practice. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ.
قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ.
مَلِكِ النَّاسِ.
مَلِكِ النَّاسِ.
إِلَهِ النَّاسِ.
إِلَهِ النَّاسِ.
مِن شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ.
من شر الوسواس الخناس.
الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس.
الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس.
من الجنة والناس.
من الجنة والناس.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
قل أعوذ برب الناس.
قل أعوذ برب الناس.
ملك الناس.
ملك الناس.
إله الناس.
إله الناس.
من شر الوسواس الخناس
من شر الوسواس الخناس
الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس
الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس
من الجنة والناس
من الجنة والناس
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
قل أعوذ برب الناس
قل أعوذ برب الناس
ملك الناس
ملك الناس
إله الناس
إله الناس
من شر الوسواس الخناس
من شر الوسواس الخناس
الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس
الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس
من الجنة والناس
من الجنة والناس
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Okay, how was that surah? How do you like that surah, Ahmad?
I liked it a lot.
MashaAllah. Fairuz, what do you feel like the surah is talking about, or what does the surah make you feel when you read it?
Well, the surah is about, if you have any bad evils or something, you can read this surah to ward off from any evils, and also Allah is asking you to seek refuge in Him.
Okay. Ahmed, Osama, how do you like reading the Quran, or how do you like it so far?
I think it's very intriguing.
MashaAllah, I feel like the Quran has a beautiful sound, very soothing. What do you think, Firdaus? How would you describe it?
It's have the verse and then the ayah is really, if you look too deep inside, the meaning is very beautiful.
Okay, all right. Now, let's ask a couple of questions here. All right. Now, when you say "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim," what is that called, Firdaus?
It's called in Tajweed isti'aza.
Isti'adha.
Yeah.
Very good. Is that right, Ahmed? Is that called isti'adha?
Yes.
When you say "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim"?
Yes.
Okay. How about when you say "Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim"? Fairuz, what is that called?
And that is called basmala.
Basmala.
No.
Very good. Okay. So when do you say isti'adha? Ahmed?
Before you start reading the Quran,
Okay.
you say.
Right now, a question I want to ask is why? Why do we say it? Fairuz?
Well, isti'aza is basically to seek refuge in Allah. So before you start anything, before you start reciting the Quran, it's better off to start with seeking refuge in Him by saying the isti'aza.
Okay, exactly. And the reason is that, like Fairuz is saying, is that the moment you sit down to read the Quran, the shaitan is going to come, or the devil is going to come, and he's going to start whispering to you, he's going to start distracting you and making you think about things and making you feel bored, and he's going to want to try to stop what you're doing in any way. So you start out by saying, I seek refuge in Allah from Satan the accursed, so Allah will protect you from that. And inshallah, we're going to stop for a break, and then when we come back from the break, we'll start out with we'll continue with the letters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to our program. Inshallah, we're going to dive right into the letters, inshallah. But before that, I want you to imagine somebody who's gone to a ski resort, and they're at the top of the hill, they've got their poles, they've got their warm clothes on, but they don't have any skis. How are they going to ski and how are they going to come down the mountain? You can't, because you don't have the tools, you don't have the basics that you need to ski. And that's why we're going to be focusing on the letters. And inshallah it'll become very clear later on how important that is. And also, inshallah, today we're going to be covering some difficult letters. Like, for example, kha. Also, we're going to be covering, inshallah, a new concept, which is the concept of a vowel. Now, in English, you've got vowels like A, E, I, O, U. But these are letters. In Arabic, it's a little bit different. The vowels go like marks on top of the word, on top of the letter, or beneath it, like that fatha and that dhamma and that kasra. So you see the first letter on your screen. It's the kha. Let's say that together. Kha.
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 Okay. Now over on your right, that letter is pronounced kha. Say that with me. Kha.
Kha.
Repeat after me. Kha.
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 Now that middle letter that has a line beneath it, that's pronounced khi. Say that, repeat after me. Khi.
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 And then that third letter that you see there is pronounced khu. Repeat after me. Khu.
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 And then, like we said last time, if you look at the first letter on the right, that has a line on top of it. That line is called a fatha. Okay? Let's say that together. Fatha.
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 And then that second letter in the middle, that has a line beneath it. That's called a kasra. Say that with me. Kasra.
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 And that third letter, it has a dhamma on top of it. Say that with me. Dhamma.
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 Okay, let's pause here for a second and let's ask ourselves a question. So, Ahmed, what are the three vowels that we have in Arabic when we're pronouncing a letter?
Fatha,
Uh-huh.
kasra, dhamma.
Yes, dhamma. Good. Can you give me an example? Can you pronounce the kha with those three vowels?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Kha,
Uh-huh.
khi,
Good.
khu.
Very good. Feiruz, can you do that for me too? Tell me first of all, what are the three vowels? And then tell me how to pronounce them.
Okay, the three vowels are fatha, kasra, and dhamma.
Okay, quick question. The fatha, how does that look?
Okay, it's a line on top of the letter.
Good. And the kasra?
A line below the letter.
And the dhamma?
Dhamma is like a sukoon on top of the letter.
Is like a sukoon?
Yeah.
Okay, let's ask that question here. Firdaus, do you think that dhamma is like a sukoon?
No.
No, actually we haven't talked about sukoon. Let's put that back. Inshallah, we're going to come and talk about that. That's very important. But the point is that dhamma, it looks like a small little waw, which is another letter that we're going to come up, inshallah, later on. Okay, that's excellent. That's very good. Now, let's make sure you're pronouncing this letter correctly. Okay? I want you to get in the habit of using your mouth. You know, pulling the corners of your mouth back, or pursing your lips. You want to start moving your vocal system. Okay? So, Ahmed, I want you to say kha.
Kha,
Open your mouth a little bit more. Kha.
kha,
Good. Feiruz?
Kha.
No, I want to see you open your mouth a little bit more. Kha.
Kha.
Very good. Excellent. Usama, why don't you give it to me with a kasra?
Khi.
Khi. Pull the corners of your mouth back more. Khi.
Khi.
Good. Excellent. And Feiruz, or I'm sorry, Firdaus. I'm sorry, I always mix up your names. Sorry about that. Firdaus, can you give me that with a dhamma on it?
Khu.
Khu. Very good. I like that. That was, very well articulated.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's move on to the next letter, which is dal. And you can see it on your screen. Say that, repeat after me. Dal.
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 Okay, good. Now the first letter you see on the right, that is pronounced da. Repeat after me. Da.
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 The middle letter that you see, that is pronounced D. Repeat after me. D.
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 Good. And then the third letter that you see is pronounced do. Repeat after me. Do.
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 Okay, let's make sure that you're using your vocal system here. You're moving your lips. Ahmed, pronounce that for me. Fatha, with a fatha, a kasra, and a dhamma.
Da
Okay?
with a fatha.
Uh-huh.
D with a kasra.
Uh-huh.
Do
Do.
with a dhamma.
Okay, now let's make it a little bit harder. Osama, can you pronounce it with a dhamma?
Do.
Do. Very good. Firdaus, can you pronounce it with a kasra?
D.
D. Very good. And Fairuz, can you pronounce it with a fatha?
Da.
Very good. Excellent. Let's look at some examples here. Can any of you think of a word that begins with a dal that has a fatha on it? If you guys want me to help you, I can. Okay, go ahead.
Da'bun.
Da'bun. Very good. Excellent. Now I want you to listen to that fatha in the beginning of that word, which is in the Quran. Repeat after me. Da'bun.
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 Okay, now let's ask a question here. Now suppose that word da'bun didn't have a fatha on the first letter. Suppose that it had a kasra. What would be the first sound? Firdaus?
For the
If there was a kasra on that dal, how would that dal sound?
Da'ibun.
No. Osama? If we had a...
Di'bun.
Exactly, it would be D, not da. We're saying da'bun, not D. Okay? Very good. Now let's move on to the next letter. This letter, inshallah, is it's very easy to pronounce, and it's a special letter. It has a nice sound to it. And you can see it on your screen. It's dhal. Repeat after me. Dhal.
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 Okay. Now, that first letter that you see on your right, it has a line on top of it, which is a fatha, and that's pronounced dha. Repeat after me. Dha.
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 Okay, the middle one has a kasra on it, or beneath it, which is that line that you see there, and that's pronounced the. Repeat after me. The.
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 And then the third one that you see, the last one on the very left, that one is pronounced thu. Repeat with me. Thu.
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 Okay, now the dhal sound is a very special sound because some people sometimes mix it up. Because there's another letter in the alphabet, and it is dha. So we want to make sure that we are making these letters distinct and clear. Because like we showed you before, if you change the letter, you might change the meaning completely. So what's the difference between these two letters? Well, when you're pronouncing dhal, the most important thing is to pull the corners of your mouth back. You're going to say dhal. Okay, repeat after me. Dhal.
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 Okay, that's good. Let's look at some examples of words that begin with dhal. Well, we have dharra. Repeat after me. Dharra.
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 Okay, let's ask that challenging question again. So I can make sure that you hear that fatha. You hear that the sound in dharra. How would that letter sound, Ahmed, if there was a dhamma on it? How would we say that letter?
Dhurra.
Exactly. It would be dhu instead of dharra. Okay? Very good. Excellent. Let's move on to another letter. This letter, which you can see on your screen also, is ra. Say that with me. Ra.
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 Good. Now the way to pronounce the first letter on your right, okay, you can see that it has a fatha on top of it, or a line on top, is ra. Say that with me. Ra.
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 Okay. Now the second letter you see has a kasra on it, and that's pronounced ri. So let me hear you say ri.
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 Okay, and the third one has a dhamma on top of it, and that's pronounced Ru. Say that with me. Ru.
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 Okay. Now, Ahmed, can you think of a word that starts with ra?
Nope. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's not a problem. Let's hear. Maybe who can help him? Feiruz, why don't you help him out?
How about Rawda?
Rawda. Very good. Now, let me ask you guys a quick question. Rawda. Does that start with a fatha, a kasra, or a dhamma? Rawda.
Dhamma.
Usama, dhamma. Rawda, you think it starts with a dhamma? Okay. Firdaus.
Fatha.
Fatha. Because remember, if it had a dhamma on it, it wouldn't say ra. It would say ru. Okay, but this word is pronounced rawda. Okay, to recap here, let's ask some questions. All right? Ahmed, what are the 3 vowel sounds in Arabic?
Fatha,
Uh-huh,
kasra,
uh-huh.
and dhamma.
Good. Feiruz, can you give me an example of a word that starts with a fatha?
As I said, Rawda.
Rawda. Okay. Can you think of another one?
Da'bun.
Da'bun. Very good. Excellent. Usama, can you think of a letter that starts with a kasra? That's a little bit hard, I know.
No.
Okay. Maybe, Firdaus, maybe you can help him out.
Rihun.
Rihun. Excellent. Very good. So, it's very important to know that each letter in the alphabet, it's very simple. It's going to be either fatha, it's going to be either a, or kasra, e, or dhamma, u. Every single letter. Ba, bi, and bu, etc. So, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, I think, how do you guys feel about the letters? So, Ahmed, do you think you feel like you're learning them, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think I'm getting a hang of it now.
Okay. Feiruz, how do you feel about the...
Improving my pronunciations.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. And Usama, you feel like it's confusing, the fatha and the dhamma and the kasra?
No, actually, after you've learned the vowels, it's very easy to
Okay.
learn the letters.
All right. Do you feel confused about like where the fatha goes and where the dhamma goes and how it looks, or?
No.
Okay. And how about you?
I feel like just now I give a wrong pronunciation, so I'm a bit confusing.
Okay.
So after a bit while, so I get clear cut about everything.
Okay, very good. All right, inshallah, we're going to see you next time, inshallah. We're going to be continuing with more surahs and inshallah more letters until we get into other rules of tajweed. Jazakumullahu khairan and very good job. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.